and welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 144. And the title of this episode is "The End is Near, the War Will Cover Up the Collapse." And we see what is happening out in the world with the chemical weapons. The U.S. government is all over the news saying that the Syrian government used chemical weapons on their own people, and this could be war, and we might go to war because of this, and we all know that this is a false flag. Before I get into the economic collapse news, I just want to say that tomorrow there will be a Saturday news brief, and on Sunday I will post an interview with Greg Manarino. We discuss what is happening and what is coming this fall, and we go over a few topics about what we thought might happen. So on Sunday I will post that. For those people who are on the alert system, you will get an email letting you know that the post has been uploaded to the site. And for those who are not on it, you can check, during the day on the site, and you can see if it is posted. But let's get into the economic collapse news. And what we're seeing now is that mortgage rates are at their highest level in 2 years. So how does that affect everything? Well, we know that the housing market is not doing well. And we know this of all the things that I've been talking about home builders saying that the foot traffic is down, home stores, gardening stores, home furnishing stores, sales are down. Application for mortgages are plunging. And now we're getting the housing data that is coming, and it is saying that, July, about 35,000 new houses were sold, 3,000 sold in the Northeast, and about 19,000 in otherwise the strong South, of which 13,000 of houses were not even started. So what does this really mean? There was about 394,000 seasonally adjusted annualized sales, missing the expectations of 487,000. And this is the incredible housing boom that they're talking about. And we can see now, and I have the graphs up on the Sentinel alerts, showing that the sales of the homes are now starting to come in behind the mortgage applications that were plunging, because there's always a lag of time. And we are starting to see that the housing sales are starting to fall now, which you expect that would happen. And now we're even coming into the winter months, and for real estate, winter is worse off than the spring and summer. And now we're coming into the winter months, and housing is really going to start to die down. And we've also see that the median price of homes dropped from 258,000 to 257,000. So the prices of homes are starting to dip a little bit, and we're going to see those come down even more as time goes on. Now, to keep with the upbeat of how the economy's doing, we know that Obama's out there, and he was visiting all different places, letting people know that the economy is doing well. We're on the verge of recovery. The housing market is booming. We are almost there. Look at the unemployment. The unemployment continually goes down, and we are so close to a recovery. To me, this is a sales campaign to convince all those people that listen to the mainstream media and the government to believe that everything is okay. But we know for a fact from all the evidence that things aren't okay. And we look at retail. We look at, how many stores are coming in saying sales are poor. We look at The unemployment, not using the manipulated numbers from the government, we're using calculations prior to 1984 before they manipulated the numbers. Now we see the Gallup polls are starting to disconnect themselves from the BLS numbers, and those are showing 8.9 while BLS is showing 7.4. But if we look at the calculation back from 1994, we're around 23%. So from all of this, we know that the economy is not doing well at all. And the Fed Williams, one of the senior Federal Reserve officials, said that the economic growth is going to pick up significantly later this year and into 2014. And they're looking to see positive results from what is happening, and that's why they're talking about this taper, and this is why they're talking about tapering this fall, which I don't believe they're going to do. I think this is something to let everyone know and to go along with the propaganda that the economy is doing well. So let's just go back in time and see how we compare to 2007, 2008 to right now. Now we know corporations are carrying more debt than they did in 2007. The federal government is carrying 60% more debt than it did in 2007. Cities and states are carrying more debt than they did in 2007. And we also know that a city also declared bankruptcy, and there are many other cities that are on the verge of bankruptcy. Interest rates have jumped by 80% in the last 3 months. I mean, if you look around, the economy is pretty much not doing well. Retailers are reporting that sales are poor. In the USA Today article back in February, there was a report of how many stores are closing. Best Buy, hundreds of stores. Radio Shack, JCPenney is just not really doing well. Sears is closing. Kmart closing stores. GameStop closing stores. And we see this, throughout the whole entire theme of what is going on. And if we look, stocks are overvalued, just like in 1929, 2000, and 2007. All those years, the stock market reached its peak, and it started to shudder at the peak of the market. And we're seeing a shuddering, a flicker of something is wrong. And the Middle East is a mess. We have war looming right now, and the European Union is in a very bad way. Even though there's propaganda out there saying the euro crisis is over, everything is doing fine, there is nothing to worry about. Go look at the U.S. stock market. That's where you need to look. But what we're seeing in the European nations, look at Greece. They told us after the first bailout, it's all they're going to need. Greece is back on track. They're doing great. Now guess what? They're going on their third bailout. Unemployment is at all-time highs in Greece, in Cyprus, in Spain, in Portugal, in Italy, in France, and the overall unemployment across the Eurozone is at 12.1%. So let me ask you, looking at all this data, are we really better off? And let me just tell you, this whole European, how the unemployment is skyrocketing, how it's not going well. We saw this back in the Great Depression. Europe was not doing well at all during the later half of the 20s and, mid to later half. America, everyone was looking at the stock market. It was hitting all-time highs of around, 380 to 400, and back then that was high. But the economy was disconnected from the stock market, and the economy was not doing well. But again, everyone's eyes were on the stock market. Even to push this further, the Federal Reserve is continually purchasing $85 billion a month, which is a mixture of Treasury bonds, because they are the Treasury market, and they are buying the toxic real estate from the banks, because the banks have a lot of foreclosures on their books, and the Fed has not let up purchasing this toxic real estate. And we've just found out, and everyone was screaming, oh, Fannie and Freddie, they're profitable and they're doing well. Well, we just found out that Fannie and Freddie are not profitable. They're losing hundreds of millions of dollars because of their tricky accounting methods that showed that they were profitable. And now the Inspector General is looking into it, and it seems like something's a little wrong. Something's a little off in Fannie and Freddie. And because of this, President Obama already announced, we're going to start winding down Fannie and Freddie. Isn't it convenient that we have an investigation going on, and now we're going to wind down and maybe, let's get rid of Fannie and Freddie before the evidence comes out. It's amazing the timing of all this stuff and how it happens. Okay, now, we know that a war needs to be started to cover up this economic collapse. And the U.S., Israel, the Eurozone, they really want to get into Syria and then the grand prize, Iran, to make them switch to the U.S. dollar as the reserve currency. They want to remove the governments and put in puppet governments and set up a private Western central bank so they have full control of the countries, just like they did in Egypt, in Lebanon, in Libya, in Iraq, in Tunisia, in Saudi Arabia. They're all puppet governments. They all sell the oil using the U.S. dollar as the reserve currency, and this is what the empire of the United States needs to do to keep the U.S. dollar as the reserve currency. They need to wage war to keep everything intact, because if they didn't use war, people would drop it. And we see countries making deals with China and Russia to bypass the U.S. dollar. China, Russia, North Korea, Iran, Syria, Australia, Brazil, India, all making deals to bypass the U.S. dollar. Okay, now, we know that the chemical weapons in Syria were done by the paid mercenaries, which is the rebels in Syria. The paid mercenaries are the U.S. government paid mercenaries, and about 95% of them aren't even Syrian. So we know that they use this, and what is happening, they're doing an investigation right now, and they're trying to figure out, because the U.S., of course, and Israel and the European community are saying that Syria used the chemical weapons on their people. But then we have to think and use common sense, which a lot of people don't like to do, but it's always good to do this and do a little research. Syria and Russia invited the UN Security Council in to inspect the country to prove that they did not use chemical weapons, and you have to remember they found the stash that the rebels had that contained the sarin gas chemical weapons, so they invited them in. At the same time, all of a sudden, there was a chemical weapons attack. And now, all of a sudden, how convenient, that was perfect. Why in the world would Syria invite the UN Security Council into the country, and Russia saying they wanted unbiased opinion of the entire thing, and why would they go ahead and use chemical weapons? And again, why would they use it on their own people? Why wouldn't they use it on the rebels? Wouldn't that make more sense if they were going to actually use it? It really does make no sense that they would use it on their own people, innocent women and children. They would use, because they're at war with the rebels, they would use it on the rebels. But this report goes on to say that the U.S. cannot intervene militarily in Syria without support from the UN, and the U.S. needs to try to work within an international framework to do everything we can to see Assad ousted. If the U.S. goes in and attacks another country without a UN mandate and without clear evidence that can be presented, then there are questions in terms of whether the international law supports it. And, this is what President Obama was talking about, that he wants the approval from the UN, and they are doing the investigation. And we have communication here. The Syria militants are preventing the alleged chemical attack probe. They're stopping the UN Security Council to try to get in there, and they're cleaning everything up and hiding the evidence. You know how that is. And once they're done, they will let them in, and they will provide safety for them, and they will help them go through what has happened here. And of course, Russia says Syria opposition is preventing an objective investigation into an alleged chemical attack near Damascus. And the Syrian opposition, again, is going to promise to help the UN Security Council, and they want to get them in there and within the next 48 hours, because it's very critical that they get in there and they see all the stuff that we cleaned up, and hopefully nothing's sticking out, or wherever they buried it and whatever they did, they don't find. Now the president is waiting, and they don't know what they're going to do at this point. They really do, but they're telling everyone they really don't. And the White House reiterated the president's position on Friday that he did not expect to send troops to the country. Well, of course they're not going to. They just trained all these paid mercenaries that were stationed in Jordan. The U.S. military just trained them, and they are allowing them to go into Syria. And the French newspaper Le Figaro reported that the first group of these trained people, these trained paid mercenaries, and they've been training now in Jordan. Now let's just back up here for a second. In my other reports, I said that the U.S. has CENTCOM, which is a base underground, which is protected from missiles and other bombs, so it's protected, and there's 270 officers in there, and it's specifically set up for the war in Syria. Okay, so we have that. We had the equipment that came over from the U.S. to Jordan for training exercises, and the troops also came over. They never left. They're still there. They've been all this time leading up to now, they've been training hundreds of paid mercenaries. So they would be, which are non-U.S. people supposedly, they would go into Syria. And what this paper is saying is that the first 300 hand-picked Free Syrian Army soldiers crossed the border on August 17th. And now the second group was deployed on August 19th. Now, the equipment that they have over there in Jordan is Patriot missile systems, fighter aircrafts, related support equipment, control and communication personnel, and systems. They have it all completely standing by and ready. And the U.S., and they're going to make this perfectly clear, the U.S. is not going to go into Syria. They are going to use these trained people, because the problem is that Russia and China are backing Syria. And if the U.S. attempts to go into there, what will happen? World War III, because Russia's going to get involved, China's going to get involved. So what they're doing is they're trying to use these false flags of chemical weapons to convince everyone they need to go in there, and they're trying to get the approval from the UN. Now, will the UN give them approval? We'll have to wait and see. I'm gonna say I doubt it. So phase 2, which they already have the people set up and ready to go, these paid people will be added into the mix, and they will try to overthrow Assad and create a no-fly zone there. And that's what they are trying to do. Now, let's move on to Obamacare. And what's happening with that is a lot of companies are starting, as we know, to switch people that were full-time into part-time. Now, Forever 21 just switched everyone into part-time roles because they don't want to be involved whatsoever with paying the health insurance. But they still have to pay, because how Obamacare works is they add up the hours of the part-time employees, and they tell you how many full-time employees you have. Yes, it's less than having the full-time, but they will still end up paying. We know that UPS is doing the same thing. And now cities across the U.S. are cutting people to part-time work because they do not want to pay this, because you have to remember, a lot of these cities are strapped. A lot of these towns are strapped. They are on the brink of collapsing. And this goes on to say that many cash-strapped cities and counties are cutting the hours of their part-time workers rather than face the possibility of paying huge health care costs under Obamacare. And Anthony Mercantanti went on to say, it's not something we prefer to do, but the cost of health insurance is significant and would really impact municipal budgets. Plus, it's not something we can take on, particularly when we don't know some of the other ramifications of Obamacare. And again, I know Obamacare is supposed to be this fantastic health insurance where everyone's going to get it, but when you put penalties and taxes on businesses and people, if you don't take it, it really isn't for the people. If you have to sell it and you have to campaign it, it's no good. And basically, what is happening across the country, businesses and people are speaking out. How do they speak out? They cut hours. They say we don't want it. We're doing this because we don't have enough money to pay for this monstrosity. This is how you know what the people want. But the government is deaf. They're not hearing it. Because why? They don't care what the people want. And what that tells you is that this government is not for the people. Now, I just wanted to get onto the NASDAQ thing. There are a lot of articles out there. A lot of it saying it's a computer glitch. They don't know what happened. And there are some other news agencies out there that are talking about this is a cyber attack. And, we've seen this before. And this one report goes on to say that, they cannot pinpoint anything malicious about the extraordinary outage of the NASDAQ stock exchange earlier, but the incident had all the earmarks of 3 waves of a denial of service attack that have bedeviled U.S. financial institutions, including stock brokerages, since last September. And we're seeing this all over the place, and they're saying this has all the hallmark and fingerprint of the Al-Qassam cyber attacks that knocked different banks offline, like Wells Fargo, U.S. Bank, Bank of America, J.P. Morgan Chase, and PNC Bank. And the NASDAQ is saying, no, it's a computer glitch. It was nothing. Other people were saying it was because the trading started to plunge and they had to do something, and they did this. But a lot of the propaganda and a lot of the news stories are starting to switch over to, could it have been a cyber attack? And this is a propaganda which will eventually happen during this fall and winter. Now, was this a test? Was this to see what would happen, and what would happen if they applied this test? Just like in 2003 when we saw the blackout, I do still believe that was a test for taking down the power grid, because for those people who've been with me and those new people now, I believe that a doomsday cyber attack will eventually happen if the U.S. government, central bankers, cannot do the following. Can't get the war started in Syria. They cannot collect the guns of all the U.S. citizens and get the UN Arms Treaty and the gun bill passed. We've already seen the lead up to shootings. We've seen the Fort Hood shooting. We saw the shooting in a Georgia elementary school. And eventually we will see even more, because the gun bill and the UN Arms Treaty is pending in the Senate. They also need to control the flow of information. And that's why CISPA is also just waiting in the Senate and pending there, waiting for a fantastic event to help pass these things. And this is all a build-up. And what I was saying is that the cyber attack, if they can't get all that done, they will use the cyber attack to do all of those things. And it is the perfect false flag, because all the news has to do is come out and say, oh my God, the financial institutions are being cyber attacked. NASDAQ is halted, stock exchange is halted, banks are closed, power can go out in different cities, not all of them because they still want people to get the news, and this can really go on and on and on, and the government can finally say, you know, it is from Syria, they're the ones who did this, we are going to wage war on them, they'll go to the UN, and it will then start everything where they want it to go if they can't get it to happen the way they're doing it now. And again, that is their last-ditch effort. Now, I know there is a DHS employee that's out there that purchased the military arms for the DHS, and he's saying that there's a race war coming. And we have to think back to the Trayvon Martin case, where they also were using the propaganda to say that there's going to be race wars in the city, and that whole thing just fizzled out and they couldn't get that going. Here they are again because they know the economic collapse is coming, and they want black people to fight with white people. They want this because it will create anarchy across the country, and if they can get it going, the president will be able to declare martial law, enact a lot of the executive orders where he takes control over all communications. So they're starting the propaganda in all these different forms, so when the time comes, they can use them. The other thing that I found today was the FBI director is worried about Americans fighting in Syria because they could bring home terrorist tactics that they can use on the American people, and they could become radical extremists, and they can learn terrorist attacks in Syria while they're fighting with the rebels, and they come back to U.S. Does this sound like they're trying to set something up here? Because it does to me. And this was FBI Director Robert Mueller. He told this to ABC News in an interview that aired Friday. They're building all of this because they know that this collapse is eventually coming, and they need to get people confused. They got to blame, and they have to understand and tell the American people that we have radical extremists, and these were the people that won't, that they have to come and collect because you're on a list. And this is why they're building all this up. It's for the end game. Now, I'm just going to go back to the sarin gas attack that happened in Syria, that they're saying that Syria used. And I wanted to do a little research because I was watching the videos on ABC News, and I was watching these people, have oxygen masks. People were touching them, wiping their heads, and things like that. And I have the video on the x22report.com site. It is on this post, so you can see it too. And you can go on YouTube also. They have it all over the place. So I wanted to do a little research on the sarin gas that they keep saying that the Syrian government is using, and what they're showing the American people. And I'm just going to read to you what sarin gas is for those who don't know. Sarin has a high volatility relative to similar nerve agents. Therefore, when you breathe it, it can be very dangerous, and even vapor concentrations may immediately penetrate the skin. A person's clothing can release sarin for about 30 minutes. And if another person comes in contact with a person that was exposed, they are also exposed to the sarin gas. So then I went to the CDC to see what should you do if you're exposed to sarin gas. Okay, removing and disposing of clothing quickly. Quickly take off clothing that has liquid sarin on it or have been exposed to sarin gas, and wash down the bodies of every person and put the clothing in plastic bags. Now, what did we see on the news? And I don't know if any of you have watched it, but I have a video here. We see people with oxygen masks. We see people in plain clothes patting them down. We see people with their clothes still on. Now, if someone is hit with sarin gas and someone's coming into your area, would you not have gloves on and a chemical biosuit? Wouldn't that make sense? And wouldn't you put them in a containment area where you get rid of all their clothes and put it into a certain contained area and wash down and decontaminate all these people while they're on oxygen? Wouldn't that make more sense? But when I look at the videos and you look at what's being reported, none of this is what is happening. So to me, this is a complete, and we know it is a complete false flag. And what they're showing everyone doesn't match up to what is happening on these videos. And I just wanted to point this out and show everyone, if we just dig a little deeper, we see things that really don't make sense. And I'm sorry, but I'm going to use this as an example. I go running, and I have someone that I run with, and a dog runs with us early in the morning. And one morning, the dog got ahead of us, and there was a skunk ahead of us. Now, the dog tried to attack the skunk, and you know what happens. The skunk let out the odor and hit the dog in the mouth. Now, the dog, it just reeked. So the first thing and it's not my dog, the person who owns the dog, took the dog back and started washing it, cleaning it, trying to get rid of the smell. Was in a different set of clothes, had gloves on so the smell wouldn't get on there, had a breathing apparatus so they couldn't smell it. Now, not just a skunk smell. Think about sarin gas. And all these people in the same room, and the clothing has the sarin gas in it. It's emitting it 30 minutes later, and not one person in a biohazard suit. I just wanted to bring that up. Listen, everyone, again, don't forget I'm going to be doing a news brief on Saturday. On Sunday, we're going to have Greg Manarino and a discussion of what's happening in the fall and early winter of this year with what we've been talking about of he's saying October crash, and I'm saying Part 1 crash of the system. And don't forget to join in on Sunday and listen to it and comment on it. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.